Hello and welcome to our show. My name is João Fernandes, founder and CEO of DocDigitizer, and I will be your host for today's episode of Automation Notes. Brought to you by DocDigitizer, Automation Notes is a collection of new and inspiring insights about intelligent automation. We will share and discuss with our guests the most recent trends, success stories, and promising projects in intelligent automation. Today with us, we have Tolani, the founder of RPA Dragon Buster. And I must say that I'm very excited for this episode because I've been following Tolani for quite some time. And Tolani is one of the most active persons nowadays talking about intelligence automation and sharing knowledge through her social networks, mainly LinkedIn and Twitter, I think. So if you don't follow her, please do. And you will be very excited by her posts. It's really incredible the amount of comments and conversations that arise from her posts. So Tolani, thank you very much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Glad
Awesome.
to be here too.
Awesome. To kickstart our conversation, can you share with our audience who you are and what you do at RPA Dragon Buster?
Yes, I started more like other people as well. You can always call it from like grass to grace, but don't let me bore you too with too many information. But I started my career in 2015 professionally, and I started as a professional .NET developer, working with a consultancy based out of London. Then in 2016, right about I think early 2016, I moved into RPI to not to work as an RPA developer with a major insurance firm in the East Anglia, just outside of in Norwich. So then in 2017, I did a bit of experimentation, moved countries, then came to Ireland. Still working with the same insurance firm, and as I always say, the rest is history. I've always been in financial services since then, but in 2021, which is one of my exciting moments, was founding RPA Dragon Buster, where we're trying to bridge the digital transformation gap for SME and mid-market financial services and healthcare. And we've been doing that for let's say a year now. I think it's very challenging. It's a roller coaster. Probably I'll be getting more advices from you as we go along because you have more experience in finding, with all these businesses and all of that. But we've been very fortunate to work with a non-profit healthcare organization just in the US, and that's kind of reinforced what our notion about the digital transformation gap for SME. So it's really an exciting journey. But apart from all of that, RPA Dragon Buster is a consultancy, and we deal with advisory and research services as well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always very excited to have people launching their own ventures, and in particular in this area of intelligent automation. And what drove you to get into intelligent automation in the first place? You mentioned RPA. You mentioned that before that you were a .NET developer. Why intelligent automation?
I think intelligent automation. I think I was already in intelligent automation before I knew I was in intelligent automation, because when I started in RPA, just around 2016, I was kind of exposed to other technologies. We had, I think back then there was Colfax, but that was your legacy OCR technology, and there was also the BPM as well, Appian, which we were, integrating some of the automations together. Back then, things were a little bit different. 5, 6, 7 years ago, things were a little bit different. So I didn't know it was intelligent automation until late 2019. So I just thought it was automation within the realms of, RPA. And I think I've been very, very fortunate to be involved with a lot of projects that gives you this integrated ecosystem. I think one of it is the customer onboarding in the bank, and all that claim processing, self-service chatbot and all of that. And I think it's quite an interesting space.
Yeah, it is, and very trending nowadays. But I saw on some of your posts, that you somehow try to demystify these differences between RPA and intelligence automation, which are two different things, but sometimes people confuse them. Um, and providing this real cool and broad intelligent automation framework with a lot of building blocks. So can you sum up to our audience the main differences between these two concepts, and why these differences are important?
Okay, so just to call it out there, like RPA is a subset of intelligent automation. So RPA is not intelligent automation, but it is a subset of some of the technologies within that space. But there are three distinctions. There are three areas I like to look at, RPA and intelligent automation. The one from the aspect of task and process automation. So, in as much as the name robotic process automation, it is nothing robotic about the technology. It doesn't think. The technology doesn't think. The technology just automates a rule-based automation that automates mundane tasks. From that perspective, I always like to say, keep the keyword task automation. Then when you look at process automation, which is an umbrella, which is within one process, you have multiple tasks. But the end-to-end journey, customer journey, which is a process, is what intelligent automation is trying to achieve. So intelligent automation brings together, I would say, data silos, function silos, different kind of process silos, and all of this together using different complementary technologies. RPA being one of it. You have IDP, process mining, etc. So it's not an or operation, it's more like an and operation. And in its simplistic form, I think for other people that are coming from, say, RPA perspective, intelligent automation is, you can simplistic form, you can say it's RPA and AI. And that kind of brings me to another analogy when I think about RPA and AI. RPA, I always say RPA is the working hands. It does all the it automates all the routine tasks. Then you have AI, which is the thinking brain. The AI gives RPA more energy. Gives RPA more informed decisions, to be able to make to be able to do some of the automation. And when you put two and two together, what you really get is intelligent automation. It's much more intelligent than what it was before. Then if you look at, I think in terms of I think lastly, in terms of the complexity, with RPA, you automate between simple to fairly complex processes, not specifically processes, but task. You automate, fairly complex to an extent, depending on what you do. And with intelligent automation, 9 out of 10, it will be complex. It will be complex processes because you're looking at end-to-end journey.
Yeah, and some of the times they even call this processes cognitive processes, or cognitive automation, or hyper automation. So a lot of terms that, in a way, I would say they mean the same thing. So going
Yes.
a lot beyond rule based automation, as you share with us. And what can you tell about the maturity of organizations on this new intelligence automation field? Because RPA is, I think, nowadays a standard, at least for enterprise organizations. But is intelligent automation already a standard?
No, it's not. It's still, I'd say it's pretty much still in its infancy. Not so much about the technology, but people just understanding the concept. What is it really about? Is it about what we've been doing before? Because automation is not new, to be fair. Um, RPA is still not relatively new, considering the kind of technologies behind RPA. It's not new. So, but when people look at intelligent automation, people are still trying to piece these things together. And I always, when I liken intelligent automation, I always say the carpenter's toolbox. And there's a reason why I say that, because the carpenters would always take whatever they need for the job. And whatever they need for the job would differ depending on the job. So every company or every organization will have different toolbox depending on what you're trying to achieve. But in terms of RPA, I think we've gotten to a place where RPA is known within the BFSI sector. A lot of the large enterprises have embraced RPA, and even those that didn't even do that during COVID embraced RPA. And I think it's a survey by Deloitte that really talks about the impact of these corresponding technologies during the COVID time. The survey actually says that like 78% of the respondents said that they were already implementing RPA, which is it's a large proportion if you think about it. And there's another 22% that weren't. There's a tiny percent out of that 22% that weren't really sure of if they were going to do it or not. Some said they were going to do it in the next 3 years and all of that. But the impact of RPA has been felt. And I think that while we're still trying to get RPA to a level of maturity, it's still going to take a while for other sectors to catch up. But in terms of intelligent automation, I think it's probably going to take a bit longer because the easiest route for companies is to go from RPI into intelligent automation, but as opposed to going straight from intelligent automation and trying to make sense of it, because once you start with RPA, you start with the standards, you start with the center of excellence, you start with the, let's say, documentation, you start with putting all the governance and standards in place, your senior management buy-in and all of that. It's difficult at this point to get senior management buy-in for intelligent automation if you haven't really started RPA. So I think at this point it's going to take a while for it to mature. But I think we're going to see the maturity in large enterprise like the BFSI before the smaller enterprise like the SME and all of that.
Yeah, we will talk about the SME markets during the episode, but before that, what do you say are the most common bottlenecks when adopting RPA or intelligent automation?
I think this is the first one I always tell everyone because it's not really the senior management. Senior management is important. Senior management buying is very important for any technology. It doesn't really matter about RPI, but having a clear vision for your RPI or intelligent automation practice. What are you trying to achieve? You can liken it to your company. What are your vision statements? Are you trying to achieve digital transformation? What are those things? Having that clear vision and communicating that top down is really really important. Then some of the other kind of the bottlenecks would be getting your senior management buying, and these also because your senior management buying like your CFO, your CIO, to be fair, they provide the initial investment into the technology. So getting their buying is really really crucial, and losing their buying can destroy everything you've built really in one day. Then I think another journey, for example, you get your initial investment, let's say from the CTO or CIO, whoever is sponsoring the initiative. Then subsequently, there has to be continuous funding, and that continuous funding might not 100% might not come from the CIO anymore. It might come from like business units, functions paying for the automation, paying for the developers, paying for the platform, and all of that. So continuously showing value to be able to get continuous funding is key. Obviously, and companies with your ROI becoming an issue, it's very difficult to get that continuous funding. Then another one is the IT involvement. How involved are IT with your automation practice? Would they stop your they can, because anything that goes against kind of IT enterprise architecture and all of that obviously would never be supported by IT. How involved are they with your, with your practice? Are they more involved with the platform? Do they, support the platform? Do they secure the platform? Their involvement with the platform is really, really key. Then having the technical expertise. And I know in as much as companies are trying to build, it's always best to build in-house capabilities, but it's difficult to have all the knowledge, all the everything you need in-house. So getting the right set of, the right mix of people to build up this your intelligent automation practice is really, really, really key. I can't expatiate on that more. It's really key.
Awesome, really awesome insights for people that are now taking their first steps on RPA and intelligent automation. And I saw on your one of your recent posts that you mentioned, and you already mentioned this in your intro, that there is still a long way to go for these solutions. And in here, I'm mixing up RPA and intelligent automation, but for these solutions to enter the SME markets. Why do you think this adoption is so hard at the moment? And at the same time, what are the benefits for an SME to adopt intelligent automation and RPA?
Okay, so let's start with some of the why this is so difficult, and I think it was also some of the challenges we had with RPA during the early days. The TCO is high, total cost of ownership is really, really high, and if you look at the Gen, again, there's a concept where we say Gen 1 RPA and Gen 2. Gen 1 is basically your Blue Prism UiPath, yeah, your OGs in the automation, RPA automation, and you have the newer versions like open source, which are your Gen 2. So the total cost of ownership, you have back in the days, even as of now, between 21 to 24% goes into your licensing, which is quite a lot. There's another 50% that goes into like core development, production, and all of that. Then you have trainings and all of that. But the total cost of ownership is so high, and large enterprises that that really took on RPA actually realized that there were so many hidden costs. In the cost of maintaining the platform, for example, these are yearly costs. These are not one-off costs. So these are some of the things that became very apparent in the large enterprises, and kind of bringing those technologies to SME is quite challenging, because I can't really go to an SME and say, oh, this is your budget. I'm trying to get, let's say, 100K from you. Their budget is not even 100K. That's not their budget
Yeah.
even to spend on the platform. Their budget is way less than that. And what they're still trying to achieve things at very cost effective way. They still want to get the best at the cost effective way. I think the TCO is really high. Then also getting like the digital. I also found that the digital transformation gap is really it's really high. Like if you look at it, because there is that gap where sometimes some of their processes are not fully digital. Some of the processes are still very manual as it is. And and intelligent automation and some of all these platforms really tries on having very digital processes. You need things to really fit, the pipeline, processes and all of that. Trying to get from from digitalization to RPA to all of these levels, it does take time for the SME, but they will get there. In as much as, and I think there's a lot of focus, and this was where we saw the opportunity, because in Ireland, for example, the SME actually forms about 70 to 80% of the iron workforce. They hire people more than the large enterprises, and so if you look at that, focusing on really trying to bring them from here to here is really, really challenging. And in as much as we want to do that quickly, we need to also the technical expertise. They don't have it in house. They're not going to have it. They're not going to have the old things that come with the platform, like the COE, security, compliance. All of that would need to be brought in at a very low cost, whether it being a subscription based or a usage based model. But it needs to be cost effective for them to be able to use it and benefit from the platform.
Exactly, and that also raises a lot of challenges for vendors,
Yeah,
because it really breaks the traditional business model they have on with enterprises, because SMEs at some point don't have the critical mass, for example, to train AI by
yeah,
themselves, or even the entry costs. are when they are very high, they simply neglect the SME market, because the SME market is not open to pay upfront a huge amount to
Yeah.
start their journey. So I would say that um, the next big step on democratizing this kind of technologies would be to have suitable approaches to the SME market. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And in addition to what you said, like there's so many benefits. If we can get this at a very cost effective, if they're cost effective solutions, it's easier for SMEs to do inventory management. It's easier for them to have smarter processes. Inventory management, supply chain management. All of this is really key. And they for SME, which is one good thing about SME that's different from large enterprises, is that SME are much more agile. They're willing to change based on market trends and what's happening in the market, and having technology that can help them to do that swiftly is very key. I think SME will really thrive with the cost effective solutions, and yeah, because it's always most of the time the SME, it's you have this exhaustion that comes with the SME. It's like you're working around the clock trying to backfill, trying to do all of this. But with automation making that pipeline simpler, it's easier for them to even innovate, um, offer other services, product and services, and still get this automation, getting them money, getting them, making them money. It's really key. I really like
Yeah.
that area.
Exactly. And besides this SME strategy for these vendors, what do you say are the most relevant trends that will significantly change the intelligent automation landscape in the near future?
I think the first one is, I think I've mentioned a couple of times, is the as a service model, the usage based service model. We've seen it like in the recent times. A lot of vendors are beginning to come up with some of those, consumption based pricing, where they're able to pay for what they consume, right? But in as much as they can pay for what they consume, which is, I think, it's one thing about the with some of those solutions, it's really getting them to understand, some of these services. Like it's very like on the RPA side of things, it's easier for you to pay for what you use if it's a cloud solution. But for the IDP side of things, sometimes you have to pay for the infrastructure, like the GPU and all of that. No one's going to allow you, like even the cloud providers, Amazon, are not going to allow you to run tirelessly on their on their infrastructure. So getting, I think, the as a service model would be a shift in the way we envisage some of these platforms. And I think that that's one thing. Then also having very innovative solutions. I'm seeing very innovative solutions that are changing. They're causing a shift in the way we think about RPA and IDP and all of these technologies. I think during the early days there were some problems we had with RPA, right? One was also like ROI. How do you capture ROI? How do you manage your COE? How do you, so there are some of all these solutions that are actually springing up now, that can manage like do COE management, and your senior management can actually see it. It's very transparent. There's some of all these technologies that are actually springing up based on these other technologies existing. So I think these things are really shifting the way people see about this technology. And I think that also, I think that what I've seen in the last few years is the way people think about IDP as a solution. So IDP has become very apparent because it exposes companies to some of these data they've stored, and they've stored it somewhere, right? It's lying on the network, lying in data warehouse or some of these places. Bringing all this data together, it's changing the way people are looking at some of these technologies, because I know with RPI, even though we you hear companies saying they have hundreds of bots in production, but what they really have is access to 20% of their data, which is structured data, right? With IDP, you have all the other 80% that has been missing for so long. The other 80% of data is not really exposed. They can really do more with this data. They can make more decisions with this data. But I think, in as much as we do all these things, I think what I really want to see as part of the trends is having standards that really go, like there's some non-standards that really govern some of these things, right? And in terms of the ethics, how we think about all this AI, how transparent it is, getting people to really understand that, if the AI is transparent, why can't we use it? Getting people to trust the AI models, getting people to use the AI models will be very important. And I think that struggle for me is completely different because we are pushing that notion in this SME market as well. Getting them to
Yeah.
use, for invoice processing, for example, getting them to use some of these automation in place with RPA and all of that. I think it's going to be very interesting the way people see it. Vertical solutions maybe might come up. More vertical solutions might come up, which might be very interesting to see.
And you mentioned trust, and trust is in fact something that you probably don't expect from a robot, because when you're implementing RPA, everything is rule based, so it's very easy to audit, and it's a step by step process. But once you start to add layers that bring to the table AI and machine learning, things and unstructured data, things become more and more fuzzy. In some ways, in some cases, more unpredictable. So automate something that is not predictable is like um, a very a paradox that
Mm.
I would say that there is still a way, a very long way to go to understand how to manage this. We always like to ask our guests for a suggestion of a book, podcast, or a person to follow, if they want to learn more about intelligent automation. So, what is your suggestion?
Well, the first suggestion is to follow me, which is which is quite obvious. But I think the other suggestion is there is this book that's on the market. I think it's called The Intelligent Automation by Pascal Bonnet. It's really good. It's a good read if you're trying to understand or pieces the information about intelligent automation. And I think it was written. He has other co-authors that are also friends of mine. So it's quite an it's a good read. And I think in terms of the space, it's changing, dynamically. And so there are other people, because now with intelligent automation, it's not just one community we're looking at a couple of communities. And I think another person that a few people that seem to be, they are very active on social media. There is Nandan. Nandan is very active. He's based in the US. They love the guy. He's based in the US. Ian Backen is based in the US. He's a good guy to follow. And they have content. Kieran Gimore is based in the UK. He has a lot of content about digital transformation. There's quite a lot of people that quite involved. Even though it's still relatively a small community. So I think in terms of podcasts, which I find myself listening to a lot of podcasts, I like the formulated automation podcast. There's some guys based out of US, so doing that podcast. So and there is also the Bot Nirvana as well. That there's a lot of information, a lot of interviews on those podcasts. Then I think in terms of forums, we're seeing a lot of forums. There's some new initiatives I'm seeing. Nandan is bringing out a new initiative. Like it's a forum where it's a safe space where people can really ask questions, like questions you can't really ask, like ROI, things like that. So there are new initiatives which I'm really really keen to be to be looking at some of this initiative from a different angle. But I would say like those guys they'll probably lead you somewhere. If I don't, they'll probably lead you somewhere else.
Awesome suggestions. And what is next for you and for RPA Dragon Buster?
So what's next for us is, of course, we want to be a force to reckon with within the SME and mid-market financial services and healthcare. But there's a lot that has to go into that. And as you may know, one is we need the right funding, for example. Another is we need strategic partnerships. Even though we've started this year with one partner, it's still going to evolve. We'll be looking at tapping into other markets. At the moment, we've started working in the US. Meeting up with some other people in the US, and we have a bit of our presence is in Dublin, but we really want to tap into Europe and the US market, because that's where we see that will be of good relevance. But in as much as we want to do that, there's a lot that needs to go into into the business in terms of structuring. So in the near future there'll be a lot more from us in terms of how we deliver more services. How we it's not just because now at the moment for our consulting we look at RPA, IDP, low code and automation analytics. There'll be opportunities to look at process mining, chatbot, etc. in the future. But right now, just gaining the presence and knowing all our onions in those areas, it makes sense for us to just focus on those areas. But we'll be looking at diversifying into that, getting more technical expertise in house. So it would be, I think, in the near future there'll be more interesting things about us.
Tolani, we are about to close this episode. I must say that hosting this episode was really a pleasure to me. I say this from the bottom of my heart because I've been following for quite some time, and it's really very insightful. Always insightful for me to chat with you. So thank you again for chatting with me and for being on our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So before we close, and if you are looking to know more about intelligent document processing or aiming to parse through a wide range of unstructured contents, Tolani mentioned a couple of examples: documents, emails. And if you are really tired of these complex setup processes, often layout by layout with a lot of training and ending up with low data accuracy, go to docdigitizer.com and learn how you can deploy a 100% accurate IDP platform, enabling you to process any document, any layout with close to zero setup, 6 times faster than traditional tools. Use the code Automation Notes 10 and get 10% discount on any DocDigitizer subscription. So for a small gift for our audience. To stay up to date with the latest intelligent automation trends, success stories, and promising projects, make sure you like and subscribe to Automation Notes on DocDigitizer social networks. I have been your host, João Fernandes, and this has been Automation Notes. See you next time.
See ya.